I am Shaggy. I am Philalitheia. Oh boy, it's cold. I'm gonna get out of the tent here pretty soon. I'm in a good mood about it. The cold, that is. I'm in a bad mood about the cold. Okay, so as per usual, laying in the tent, scrolling the internet till I find something I want to talk about, or at least something that sparks something close to what I want to talk about. And I'm watching this. What I can only assume, I have to assume that everything is fan fiction on the internet. I just choose to assume that everything is either fan fiction or bullshit that I see on the internet until I go and I seek attestation elsewhere. Right? Because I spend $10 a month on Gemini, I tend to try to justify that $10 a month, that expenditure, by talking to her for an hour or two a day. Whatever. Okay, get my battery charging here. Anyway, so scrolling the internet. I'll work on getting the camera clean and stuff here in a second. I'm not fucking worried about your experience yet. It's still cold for me, and these are gonna fog up. I'm flipping through YouTube, looking for something to talk about, looking for something to catch my imagination or my interest, or to spark something I know I haven't talked about recently on the channel. And I see this little, what I can only assume is a fan video, a fan movie, but it might be from Tears of the Kingdom. I don't know. I don't know Zelda. Um, let's pivot to another little short that I saw yesterday, last night as I was winding down to go to sleep. Mr. S and I were trading shorts on YouTube, and what I was doing is, because I use my personal, no, I don't. I use the channel YouTube to scroll shorts, because I don't have very many subs, and I don't like or dislike anything as I go through, so the algorithm is just wide the fuck open for me. It shows me a lot of stuff, and then he shows me stuff that I would never see, and so I just let the algorithm, or whatever you want to call it, I let them show me things based on what he shows me. We were doing that last night, and damn, I've lost it. This always happens. So anyway, we'll pivot back to the video that I was watching. Zelda, I remember what I was talking about. I was talking about how she was sending me videos, and then I was scrolling through, and I saw this guy. Before I talk about Zelda from my perspective, I want to talk about Zelda from other people's perspective real quickly. I've only played Link to the Past all the way through. I didn't enjoy any of the others, and this is why. I was watching a guy going through a Comic Con, not necessarily a Comic Con, but he was going through some convention, and there were just Zelda fans all over the place. Maybe he was going to like Zelda merch tables or whatever. Hello, Easy In. And he's going to like Zelda merch tables or whatever. You don't know, Easy In, that I don't have my phone oriented the other way. So shouting at me is not a good way to make a good first impression. You don't know for a fact that I can see my chat. Anyway, this guy's going around with a little microphone in his phone, and he's going around this convention to different merch tables or whatever, and he's asking people the same question. He's asking them, is Ocarina of Time, Zelda Ocarina of Time, is it overrated? And the majority of people said yes, but if you watch the eyeballs and you know what you're looking at, for the people who said no, only one of them didn't lie. Only one of them didn't lie. There is a lot of social pressure. There's a lot of social pressure from N64 fanboys to overrate how good Ocarina of Time was. Ocarina of Time was trash. I couldn't play it. Because then I owned it, and I chose not to play it because it was trash. There were much better games on the 64. Like Ogre Battle 64 is a much better game. And they'd already done that gimmick in Link to the Past, so doing it in 3D just didn't do anything for me. Because I want to say that I was already on the PC, that and we already owned a PlayStation. So 3D graphics and 3D visuals and a 3D world environment, open world environments were never interesting to me. So Zelda pulling like the open world move just didn't interest me at all. Um, Now, why did I bring up Zelda? Because Ocarina of Time was overrated. And I saw this little cartoon short, where Zelda's got a sword and there's this guy and they're in like a dark tunnel. And the guy is all obviously Americanized, like the American version of Japanese crazy. And so he's like moving his head in weird ways that people wouldn't do. And he's being sinister and weird in a way that only a small threat less, um, as in a small person who presents no threat to him would find threatening and uncanny and uncomfortable. So clearly, I'm pretty sure that what I was watching was a fan cartoon or whatever, a fan animation. And so this guy's acting cliche, and she's like holding her sword real close to her. She's like walking. And then basically the course of their conversation only lasts like maybe 15 or 20 seconds, and it cuts out. So I don't know. I don't know what the thing I watched was. But over the course of time, he says that, I guess she's trying to free Link from his clutches or something. Who knows? They're trying to do the hero inversion. And she asks him, he says that there is something he wants from her, or there is something she could do for him. And she says, "Oh, you want my soul?" He turns around and he's like, "No, I don't want your soul." And so if he's like a if he's a how do you say this? Mephistophelian character. If he's a character like Mephistopheles, which is, what is that? I don't remember. We'll think of where Mephistopheles came from. He's a character. He's a Satan figure, but he's from much later, actually, in the literary convention, the literary history of satanic figures than I think, or even Luciferian figures, serpent figures, tempter figures. Then I think you would. It's Faust. He's from the play Faust. And Mephistopheles is actually the first example of a satanic Luciferian serpent figure, a tempter in a metaphysical / mythological setup, who tempts with contract. He actually like wants your soul. He has something that he wants from you, right? And so he's trading you to get it. He's the first example of that. And so in this little Zelda cartoon, um, this character obviously is a Mephistophelian character, right? He's a Mephistopheles in archetype, or at least in influence. Like they want this character to be a Mephistophelian character without knowing Mephistopheles at all. They know what they've seen of the archetype, but they haven't, for example, watched or read Faust. Faust is a play, so you can watch it be performed. But their characters got like this sort of the long black jacket and the real nice attire, but then there's something wrong with his face. Like these are archetypes, but they're archetypes from like the 1800s, maybe even the 1900s. Very, very recent, maybe as late as the 1600s, but I don't think so. And by late, I mean late away from us, as long ago. So who wants to talk about why the devil wants to buy your soul, or why your soul is a commodity that could be traded? Why might something want that? And why might he not have wanted hers? If your soul is something that some entity, a human being, a non-human being, a formerly human being, a not yet human being, might want your soul, why? What might they want with it, and why might it be a commodity? That's a question that I have. I wonder what other people think about it. Because your soul is the one thing that makes you you. It, on some level, your soul, strictly defined, is your pattern decision making. It's your pattern, orientation, right? And so, if mystically speaking, well, like we can reach to New Age a little bit, we can reach to metaphysics, we can reach to Plato a tiny bit. Um, but if we're born for a purpose, hey Dave, if we're born for a purpose, and some people believe this, some people don't believe this, but if we're born for a singular purpose, for one reason, we exist and we live and we die and we have a purpose. That means that the soul incarnates for a reason. I don't know, Davey. Hi, Wednesday. How we doing? It's kind of not what I'm talking about, Dave. You're interrupting me. It's rude. The soul incarnates for a purpose, for a reason, for a why. There's a why there. It's not just a how. See, mechanical science, our mechanistic worldview, it sees how, and then it fills in the why with magical thinking. So, like, actually, it doesn't even see the how. It sees the what, and it fills in the how with magical thinking. So, like yesterday, I got all side railed and twisted up and very upset because I was reading this article. I was reading this article that I actually wanted to read, and I was really excited to read because I thought, here's an opportunity for science and science education and science communication to get it right. For 2,000 years in China, there's this plant that's bright yellow that they've been harvesting for medicine. Well, you'd have to explain what that means, Sky Masters. And there's this plant that's been harvested. It's bright yellow, and it's been harvested for Chinese medicine for 2,000 years. And harvesters of that plant have begun to notice that in recent decades, maybe even recent years, like the last 3 of them, the adult version of that plant is no longer turning bright yellow. It's actually staying wilted and brown and laying up into the rocks that it grows out of. That is an example of evolution. But the way the article describes it is to go that the plant is problem solving a defense mechanism. That's not what's happening. Those plants are not intelligent. They on the course of their growth to their mature stage, they do not at some point go, I'm not going to turn yellow, because they're not thinking. They're not thinking. They have sensors. They can sense the environment, but what they're not doing is what I was hoping we would find, because the article says something to the effect. The title was something to the effect of "Plants have learned to hide from humans." I was hoping what we were going to find was an example of our specific, like, search frequency as we stomp around looking for them, had them, like, retreat down into the ground, because there are plants that will do that. Tomatoes communicate with one another when we're plucking them. Grass screams in pain as we cut it. They communicate and sense the world in frequencies and in ways that we cannot comprehend without years and 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 years of worldview adjustment. So whatever the fuck you're talking about transcending matter and being human, I'm talking to you about not transcending anything. You can't transcend fuck because you don't exist as what you are yet. You can't transcend what you are because you're years before actually being who you are. Can't transcend that. Not in the moment, not in the now. All you can do is wait until you're fully you. Like a plant. And so what upset me is that there are 2,000 years of environmental pressure on this plant, on this species of plant. There are 2,000 years of genetic pressures on this plant to not transcend all the way to the mature stage. But what was happening, there's a pressure, there's an environmental pressure on these plants to not go all the way to their mature stage in coloring. It's humans. And we know, I don't know why the scientists that did this study, probably because it puts pressure on China, but why are we not putting pressure on China? We know that over the course of the last 2,000 years, ramping up to the last century, that Chinese medicine, Chinese folk medicine, is putting life forms in extinction. It is extincting life forms. They didn't defend themselves from us. What happened is that we killed all of the plants that matured in areas wide enough that that appeared to have matured. That what happened is the plants that did mature but weren't harvested weren't harvestable. So their offspring slowly over 2,000 years, probably over just the last century actually, their offspring stopped getting all the way mature because they got to have offspring. This is how evolution works. There's no intelligence there unless the DNA is intelligent and self-aware. The plant is not intelligent. The plant is not saying, I am not going to reach adult maturity because then I won't be harvested by human beings the way you are. The plant can't halt its own biological growth. It can't stunt its growth on purpose. It can't stunt its maturation on purpose. It doesn't have a cognitive maturation to stunt on purpose. That's not a thing. Plants can't do that. And so when we give agency to plants, we're doing everything wrong, especially science. It's very upsetting to me. So if our soul is the bit of us that is the agent, has agency, why would something want to own it? Why would something want our soul? What are they going to do with that once it's no longer inhabiting a body? What do they want with it? Poor plant couldn't conceptualize being eaten. All the plant can conceptualize is that it's alive or that it's dying. It doesn't have a mind. It doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have awareness. It has awareness of the environment, but it doesn't have awareness to the degree that we do. It doesn't have awareness that it can be eaten. It doesn't have an awareness that there are other life forms that do things like eat. I have seen things like that. I communicate with plants. I communicate with this tree that holds up my tarps. It didn't know I was trying to kill it. It just knew that it wanted to be alive, if it knew anything. Well, being human, right, we can assign agency to anything, and we can also assign friendship to anything. Hello, Kinsey. It was a big joke circa 2009, 2010. Well, by that metric, you're being a terrible friend to me, Jess. It was a big joke circa 2009, 2010, somewhere around then, maybe as early as 2008, that the soul wasn't a real thing, and so people were selling their souls to one another. But why would an entity that can see your soul as a point of light inside all the electromagnetic and otherwise radioactive frequencies inside your body, why would that thing want that thing? What would it want with it? Just saying, Jess. If you expect plants to listen to you without interrupting and talking about things other than what you're talking about, you are doing a bad job of being the thing that you want from the world. You are interrupting me to talk about something other than what I'm talking about. So if I were talking to this camera like a plant, doing a bad job of listening and not interrupting, which is your metric of friendship. See, I react this way and I say this glibly, even flippantly, because I can remember being in seventh grade and being asked to write an essay, the whole class being asked to write an essay on what makes a good friend. So it's not something you've never engaged with if you've been in public education. And now I know that there is a growing percentage of adults in the world that didn't undergo any sort of formal education outside the home. But that doesn't put you in a place to speak in public about friendship. You haven't undergone it. Like, frankly, where is your heartfelt confession in your memoir about your struggle with maintaining your faith with your God and your worldview and your nation and your family because your best friend died and you were powerless to do anything about it? Where's that from you? I don't know what you're talking about, Pickle. I know the answer. I know why an entity like that would want your soul, would want any soul, would want specifically the main character in the novels or the movie or the play or the myth, why they would want that soul, and then why Zelda's soul is irrelevant to him. I don't want your soul, I want his soul. But there is something I want from you. I want you to make yourself helpless so he'll come and fix and come and save you. Because then I can get his soul. I don't know what you're talking about, Pickle. I don't know where the conversation is coming from. I don't know why you want to lead it, and I don't know what the fuck it has to do with what I've been talking about. I just don't know what you're talking about, so I'm not spending the cognitive energy to try to figure it out when I haven't eaten today, and there's a very good chance I don't eat today. It's not in the fucking mood. I swear to God. That's a big heart. Thank you for that, Tim. Nothing anymore. I've given up trying to talk on a singular subject. You guys do what you're gonna do. I'm gonna get out of this tent eventually. Fine, Tim. I'm in a bad mood now. My fiance has left me. I'm fine. What does that say? I've made $8 today, so I'm better now. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. I'm glad you enjoy my work, buddy. It means a lot to me. I don't receive a lot of praise. How are you doing today, buddy? What's on your mind and your heart? Why did they bother perforating this if it doesn't tear at the perforation? What's going on? Dollar Tree NyQuil? Nuvi Care? What? I'm not mad about it. I'm just like, well, now my pill is exposed to the air. Damn it! That's what I was trying not to happen. Kind of cold. Going through a rough time. I don't love hearing that, buddy. Yeah, positive thoughts, positive outcomes. Positive thoughts for positive outcomes. Positive thoughts don't guarantee positive outcomes. Positive thoughts encourage positive outcomes. It's a lot harder to arrive at a positive outcome via negative thoughts. A lot of different religious systems, a lot of different philosophers, but the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, said, good thoughts, good speech, good action. They don't equate the three. They don't equate to good outcomes. It's not an equals. This isn't algebra. It's a flow chart. Okay? Because at any moment, I think about this a lot. You might not give a shit, but I think about this a lot. Hey, Mwit, they can't hurt, right? Positive thoughts can rarely hurt. You gotta go to some really magical and stupid thinking to hurt yourself with positive thoughts. But it was either it had to have been my freshman year of high school. My freshman year of high school, during the orientation, right, where the principal brings everybody in. It might have just been the freshman, but I thought it was the whole school. It might have just been the freshman that he was talking to. And it might have been just me that he was talking to. And I can explain to you if you want to know why I think it might have been only me that he was speaking to. And he gets up on the stage, the auditorium stage, and he's talking. And I was keyed in. But what I remember him saying is that there's a moment. Everything you choose, every decision that you make in your life, there is a split second where you could do the opposite of that. That's what he said. He said everything that you do in your life, every choice you make, every thought you have, every word you speak, there's a split second where you could say the opposite. And then he goes on to explain that he's talking about violence. He's talking about that you don't have to bully, You don't have to react to being bullied, and you don't have to respond to the violence of the bully reacting. That when it comes to violence, when it comes to things that can lead to violence, there's a split second where you don't have to engage. And I've thought about that my whole life. And so the way that the positive thoughts, positive speech, positive action for positive outcomes, the way that works is that there's a split second before you think, and then before you say, and then before you do something deleterious to your health, someone else's health, or to your future ability to apologize and reconcile. There's a split second before you can do actually nothing, not even the opposite, just nothing at all. This is called Taoism, right? And so the Tao Te Ching, which I've read for the channel, a lot of it, the Tao Te Ching and what's his name? Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu was an older man during the Warring States period of China. Thank you, Tim. Deleterious is one of my favorite words. Because deleting, something that deletes, we can all understand the tragedy of anything being deleted in the modern world, and us not having a control Z or an undo to fix it instantly. Fuck, now I gotta spell that word again. Even that's annoying. We understand, I think we understand deleterious better than negative. Because negative is negative, isn't it? It negates, it brings something back to zero. Deleterious is erasure. Colloquialism is a great word. But doing nothing is effectively Wu Wei, right? It's being the stone in the river. It's knowing that any of your actions can possibly cause harm to you or someone else. And so you wait, you stand firm. That doesn't mean that you aren't eroded by the passage of time, right? It doesn't mean that that's not also deleterious in some way. But that doesn't mean that you have to do it for a long time either. It just means, like, before you send that text that's going to ruin your friendship, just don't. Just sit on it. Like that. Hey, Spartan. Like, just don't. Just delete it. Or just don't. Just don't look at the thing that you know is going to upset you. Just don't look at it, right? Manage what your eyeballs look at. Manage what you're thinking. Like, hear yourself thinking negative thoughts and go, negative thoughts are going to lead to negative outcomes, right? It's a flow chart. It's how we navigate the forest of choices. Because I think of it like is it called pachinko, right? The Japanese gambling game. It might even be Chinese. The Asian gambling game where they've got the boards. They've got like a board slanted on an incline, maybe even vertical, but slanted on an incline for sure. And it's got these pegs that are not really randomly placed. And the bettor, are trying to get the ball to a specific spot on the bottom of the board, right? That has multipliers of however much you're betting at the bottom of the board. But some of them also have negative multipliers, so you owe more money if you hit that plinko. And you drop it, and it bing, 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 down. That's how I think of navigating life. I see every opportunity to hit a peg and make a different decision. And sometimes you can see as you're going down in a sort of Takeshi's Castle or MXC, if anybody remembers that. If you're in kind of like an MXC situation, running toward the peg, you can kind of see how the other pegs are oriented around us. And we've all played bouncy like games like Peggle or Mario. Like, we've all played games like this. We've all manipulated 3D or two-dimensional realities. This is kind of why I was shitting on Zelda. Kind of why I think about shitting on Zelda, is because that wasn't the first time anybody had navigated a 3D environment in an RPG in the way that Zelda wanted to, and every decision they made was amateur and uncomfortable, and they force you to play it the way they designed it, even if the way they designed it isn't particularly comfortable. You do that every time you get on your bike where you live, yeah, because you get on the bike where you live, you know effectively where you're going, and you know where there are going to be people who are going to threaten your life, but also you can never predict every single place where there's going to be a car that you didn't expect, for example, or a walker that you didn't expect, or a detour, right? This is life, right? We're navigating a path. This is even why they call it a path, or the way. This is why Jesus called himself the way. I am the way. Follow me through this treacherous desert a la Moses, and you will arrive where you are meant to be. But by that same thinking, Jesus wants your soul. Why does Jesus want your soul? What do these psychopumps want with our souls? What are they doing with them? And to what end? Right? To what end? Like in the latter medieval and pre-modern Christian worldview, Satan would buy from you your soul in a contract if you were a witch, or anyone. This is just kind of what defined witchcraft in the I don't know, 14 through 1800s. Juggle that and tell me I'm wrong, because I'm probably wrong, but it starts around the 1300s, I think, and it ends around the 17 or 1800s. But the idea is that the devil would appear with this contract, and you'd sign it in blood, and he would have your soul, but you would have these powers, even if the powers were just to like torment goats in your neighbor's yard or whatever. To what end? Why does the devil want to torment your neighbor? But why the soul? Why can't it just be, you do that thing and I'll pay you the wage? They knew wages. They knew how wages worked the whole time. So why does God want, or not, sorry. Well, why does God want, but why does the devil want ownership of the soul? What's the point? Yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, sure, to affect us. Right, but why doesn't he want to buy that guy's soul? Why does he just want to torment that guy? And so why own us? Because ownership, it's the ownership thing. It's the ownership thing that I'm fixated on. It's less the outcomes. Yeah, the outcomes seem superficially obvious to me. I'm not saying that you're not thinking in the right. It's the ownership. Why the ownership? Yeah, we're collateral damage, totally. But like when Molly dies, he still owns her soul. So Molly can like materially no longer torment that guy, but he still owns Molly. So what does he do with Molly? How is that a commodity to him? How does that grow in value to him? If you've got a lot of money, like if you've got the money necessary to buy somebody's soul, it has to grow in value. You have to be able to sell it to someone later, or she has to be valuable to him in the afterlife. Like after her life, that soul has to grow in value in some way. Otherwise, this is a bad investment, and the devil is just an idiot. And that doesn't sound right to me. Because if that's how we make more demons, maybe, but to what? I mean, that is how the folklore works. Molly now haunts that land and torments anyone who's there forever. That is kind of how witches work in Appalachia. Long live the devil. But then that would class all demons as formerly human. Which has me thinking of Paul. Paul called the angels former humans. He called not the angel of the Lord, but he called the angels were human souls. Maybe. But the name of your God there, Necred, kind of loses my interest. Okay. So I was talking the other day about nuclear radiation and experiments with nuclear radiation that the ancient world might have been able to do, might have been doing. Because granite is radioactive. And so everything I'm going to say right now is speculative, and I would actually prefer to go and research what I'm going to say before I say it out loud, because it's totally speculative. Totally speculative. But all the things that Enoch, in the book of Enoch, that God blames in the book of Enoch, and so the author, Enoch, right, blames on the fallen angels of the giants and the Nephilim in this period of history in Genesis, which, depending on how you interpret it, can be a lot of different periods in human history, because the authors of Genesis didn't know before the Bronze Age. They didn't know about the Stone Age, okay? But Sumer had memories back into the Stone Age. They had folklore memories back into the Stone Age. Egypt had folklore memories back into the Stone Age. The Hittites and Greater Anatolia had memories back into the Stone Age. And the Levantine area had memories back into the Stone Age. The post-exilic Jews did not have memories back into the Stone Age. So the Genesis, depending on how you read it, can be read for a lot of different time periods. A lot of different time periods. It's a poetic work that's relying on metaphor to keep the knowledgeable in the unknowledgeable in the tribe, and the knowledgeable managing the unknowledgeable. And so the knowledgeable might have known a lot of different things about how to interpret these stories that we today ignore because we say, well, they didn't know the Stone Age. Okay, maybe. And they wouldn't have remembered the Ice Age. Definitely. For sure. Definitely not. Maybe. But if you eat enough acid, if you eat enough LSD, or enough not MDMA, DMT, which were both synthesizable compounds in antiquity, as early in time as 4000 BCE, synthesizable compounds. But if you take enough LSA, which is much easier to derive than LSD from the sources that they could have derived LSD. LSA is much easier to arrive at. It's much more natural. You don't have to do nearly as much work to prepare it. And you can derive it from ergot. And the thing is, when you make ergot no longer poisonous, like no longer lethal, you get LSA. And so if you take enough LSA and you sit in a box full of radon gas, which is radioactive, you might accurately see the past 10,000 years ago. Might. Your brain might become sensitive enough as a transponder of just the human brainwaves and the human memory that Jung called the collective consciousness, you might become sensitive enough to look that far back into the past. Might. I don't know. I've never taken radon gas. I've never incorporated radon gas into my LSA meditations, and I used to regularly superdose on LSA and meditate on scripture. You might be able to look that far back in time, but the Egyptians were doing that thing. They were dosing people in Blue Lotus. They were dosing people with Blue Lotus, which can derive LSA and LSD, and they were taking them into the pyramid. The pyramid is a giant radioactive oven. And so here's where I'm speculating. One of the other things that we know about Enoch, that everybody just knows about Enoch vis-a-vis the Watchers, the Nephilim, the giants, all of this thing, is that there were these beings called the sons of God. That arrived on earth on the top of a holy mountain and then came down off of the mountain and gave offspring to human women. And those offspring to human women, they taught to do all of the iniquitous things that humans do, like jewelry crafting, art, storytelling, these things, clothing making. The interesting thing is that outside complex clothing making, all of those things we actually learned from Neanderthal and Denisovan non-Homo sapiens, Homo species. And so if the author of Enoch were having the kind of visual and extra sensory experience that he was claiming to have, there's no reason, from my perspective, not to think that he was having it superdosed on some drug. Whether opium or LSA or LSD or psilocybin or amanita mushrooms, or some combination of other things like diethyl ether, volcanic vents that vent gas, and radon. These were all things they had access to, and so these were all things they were using. One of the things that neurologist, published author, and host of the Skeptic's Guide to the Galaxy used to always say, and he used to always say it with this cynicism, like rolling his eyes, but everywhere humans have been, we have figured out how to get high. We have figured out how to trip balls. And so what that means is that that tripping balls state goes back to before we were fully Homo sapiens sapiens, that something drove our evolution. And I don't think it was mushrooms. I think it was electromagnetic. I think it was EMFs, electromagnetism, and radiation, because the place where they found our earliest ancestors' bones were in highly irradiated parts of Africa. Everywhere that we migrated out of Africa, we stopped in places that were highly irradiated. And so if we're talking about ritual, or if we're talking about sensitivity, or we're talking about following someone who is magical, like Moses, and that magical person saying, okay, none of the places that we have camped until bing now are the right spot. And that bing now that he can feel is just hypersensitivity to radiation. He can feel it, and it doesn't affect him in the same way as everybody else. All of the symptoms of Moses coming down from the fucking mountain with the tablets, it would have been extremely easy for him to have carved those tablets into uranium, but also into other irradiated stone that they could have quarried from that mountain, that he could have literally quarried from the top of the mountain. Because if the irradiated substances are thrust up to the top of the mountain by the creation of the mountain, then the mountains themselves would become places where you don't want to go, because they'll melt you alive. So he goes up there and he carves out this irradiated stone. He carves these laws into it, and he comes down and he's glowing and his eyes are burnt out, so he's got his fucking hood down over his eyes so nobody can see that he's got actinic radiation around his eyes, and his skin is visibly glowing because that will fucking happen. You glow white when you're around enough radiation for long enough. You luminesce from the inside, and he's carrying these stones, and then he sees what they've done and what he's done to his body, and he smashes them on the ground. But then they have to go into a gold box because they're killing people still. Because they're irradiated. They're still magical. It wasn't what he carved on them that made it magic. Huh? I've been working on this idea for 20 years, Ben, and it plays out. It stacks up. Dan, I guarantee you that just this year I have read an exponentially greater number of books than you have. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a scholar, so I don't have maps. And I'm homeless. All I can do is keep cross-referencing Google searches because nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about this. Ben, you're too dumb to be talking to me anymore. I know that it would be unfair if I considered you an opponent. So rather than expose your ignorance by allowing you to be a proponent of the opposition, I will just remove you from the conversation entirely. Welcome back, Tim. Because you can't think about and research and talk about the things I'm talking about from a home. Ellen. People try to destroy me from homelessness. They would try to kill me if I were providing for myself with this information. Hello, O. And this research. Other scientists are proposing the things that I'm saying. They're just not proposing them in a unified field theory like I am, in a unified theory of how folklore demonstrates exactly what was going on in history. Because we have this idea, we have this idea that we got in the 1800s, that because we were in the 1800s, we were just better a priori than all other humans who had come before us. And so the only humans that we could learn from were Rome. And so we spent about 200 years in that worldview. It wasn't until about 2008 that students and authors started to go, wait a minute. There were a lot of other successful civilizations besides Rome, and the reason that the American healthcare crisis is happening is because the United States refuses to look to other systems for guidance. This 200 years of superiority idea can't work. It doesn't work in other abstractions of my life as an author. It's cold, Josh. And so for the last 20 years, give or take, some people have been looking at the world. And so there's this other guy who came to my theory, and he's published on this stuff I'm talking about before I have. I haven't read his work. I just found out about it maybe 2 days ago, maybe yesterday even. Ask T-Rex when I found out about it, because he was there the day I learned. But we have this idea that ancient people couldn't have been doing complex chemistry because they didn't know the why, and they didn't write the why. But you can arrive at complex chemistry by accident. Easily could have. They were doing extremely... Okay, so let me pause for a second. In the historical record, like as far as what we're willing to talk about, bronze comes out of nowhere. Bronze is a green rock, and what we don't find, Terrence McKenna, is years behind me, Beaver. I discarded Terrence McKenna about a decade ago. Yeah, you can move. We can move tons by vibration. And this guy, this Russian scientist, he's actually an atomic nuclear physicist. Um, he demonstrated that you could actually sharpen with nuclear radiation. If you knew what you were doing, you could actually sharpen a copper blade, a bronze blade, but a copper blade. You could actually irradiate the blade such that if you applied it to granite, it would just melt the granite. And so if they were doing that with their bandsaws, that's why it was so easy for them. If they're just melting it down, that's why we're not finding broken. Because what we don't find, this is why the alternate historians throw up red flags. What we don't find is bodies broken with the labor of cutting these stones, like we find Neanderthal bodies broken with the labor of cutting stones. I have no problem with nuclear technology. I'm saying that our ancestors had a form of nuclear technology. Uh, yeah, probably. The black goo. I know that there's a black mass of melanin in our brain that neutralizes atomic radiation because the process of turning a thought into an electrical impulse is um, it leaves a radiation signature, and so it would poison and mutate the brain. And so what I'm trying to think about is, were these Nephilim, these people, were there a class of people who were genetically altered by being around nuclear radiation, who also accelerated human biology, who also accelerated our human evolution? Did we mate with other human species in highly irradiated areas, and is that why we remained able to speciate? Was there a more intelligent pressure on human evolution after the Ice Age than before it? Was there an intelligent pressure on human evolution before we were Homo sapien? Is that why we pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed intelligence, was to find these irradiated places on the planet? These are questions that I don't know how to answer, but they're questions that I will be seeking answers for. No, the ocean is much more difficult to explore than space. Radiation is easier to shield against than pressure, like the guys that imploded in that submarine. It's just a lot more risky. The robots that we can send to Mars are the technology is easier to arrive at than the technology to send robots to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, for example. Exactly, intrepid chimp. And then I'm wondering if intelligence didn't intelligently guide itself. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like magpies. Magpies are highly intelligent, but that doesn't make them highly successful at eating. Most magpies starve to death by 3 years old, even though they have like a 30-year lifespan. Most magpies starve to death shortly after they're able to have offspring, because the intelligence allows them to find food, but it allows them to find food and it allows them to find water, but that doesn't necessarily equal successful to the degree that humans have been successful in their environments over and over and over and over and over again for 250,000 years and more. And so that's a real outlier. And so the answer, humans arrived at the answer, well, God loves us more. Okay, well, who's God in that context? Is it the DNA? Was the DNA trying to arrive at intelligence that could intelligently manipulate the DNA because the DNA is intelligent? And so the DNA needs an intelligent to intelligently manipulate the DNA. And is that why the devil wants to buy our souls? Because our souls are the intelligence manipulating our DNA. And if the devil owns our souls, then the devil is able to control for our reincarnation, which means manipulate our DNA over time, right? I don't know what smart dust is, or exactly how it engages in the theme. Doesn't Hitachi have two eyes? Okay, anyway, I have to go. Thank you guys for being here.